미디어 프로젝트 12주 3차 시강의를 시작하겠습니다. 챕터 9는 기하급수 기업으로 변신한 대기업들입니다. 이번 시간에는 기하급수적 변화를 이끌고 있는 스페이스X에 대해서 알아보도록 하겠습니다. 스페이스X는 미국의 항공 우주 장비를 제조 및 생산하고 우주 수송을 하는 회사입니다. 우주로의 수송 비용을 획기적으로 절감하고 화성을 식민지하겠다는 목표 아래 인터넷 벤처기업 페이펄 창업자인 일론 머스크에 의해서 설립되었습니다. 스페이스X 프로젝트들과 이들의 성공 및 실패 사례에 대해서 알아보도록 하겠습니다. 관련 동영상을 보겠습니다.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff.
This year alone, SpaceX will make more rocket engines than the rest of U.S. production combined. That's a lot of rocket engines.
SpaceX has been really exciting. It has revolutionized the public's interest in space exploration and rockets and sending humans back into space.
Much like the Tesla automobile, they do it their own way. And they take risks.
Yeah, well, it is science fiction. I love science fiction. But science fiction does sometimes come true.
스페이스X가 많은 실패를 딛고 성장을 하기까지에는 사이언스 픽션을 좋아했던 그들의 어린 시절에 꿈이 있었습니다. 이러한 꿈들은 온갖 난관 속에서도 직원들을 한데 뭉치게 했고 문제를 끝까지 해결하는 회사의 컬처로 이어졌습니다.
SpaceX has become a household name in America, and it's little wonder why.
Becoming a spacefaring civilization is one of those things that makes you excited about the future.
Founded by the eccentric and controversial Elon Musk, the rocket builder is now one of the most valuable private companies in the world, ranking among the likes of Uber and Airbnb. It's completed more than 67 rocket launches to date, launching north of 16 cargo missions to the International Space Station for NASA. It successfully launched Falcon Heavy in 2018, the most powerful rocket in the world. It's closing in on being the first to launch American astronauts from the US since the end of the Space Shuttle program, and it's deep into developing and testing a new generation of engines and rockets to send people around the world in minutes and even to Mars.
I mean, I think, the second person Elon pitched SpaceX to, and I was like, oh, you're going to be doing this thing that comes off, national government subsidies and so forth. Oh, this is a disaster. And he was right. I was wrong. That's how that plays out.
스페이스X가 어떻게 스타트업으로 시작해서 기하급수 기업으로 성장했는지 알아보도록 하겠습니다.
Elon Musk had a dream, sending an experiment to the red planet. He essentially wanted to land a greenhouse with plants on the Martian surface. But after Musk put a small team together to create plans for the mission, he discovered US rockets were very expensive. Russian rockets were much cheaper, but when Musk went to buy one of their rockets, he was turned away, and reportedly very rudely.
You could tell the chief designer, he was getting agitated, Finally, he was just so agitated, he literally spit on Elon. He spit on his shoes. And, and Elon turns to me and goes, I think he spit on me. And I said, yeah, Elon, that's a sign of disrespect.
Spurned by the lack of rocket options, Musk crunched the numbers and decided to build his own. He took money that he made from the sale of PayPal. That rocket became Falcon 1. Truly incorporated as space exploration technologies, Musk's team began building its first rocket.
So this is when SpaceX really started to elbow their way into DC. They were starting to compete with the massive aerospace and defense contractors who held the keys to the most valuable launches for the US military and NASA.
He builds a rocket, and then he takes that rocket and puts it on the back of a trailer and drives it through the National Mall up to DC in a big FAA party to basically say, put a stake in the ground and say, I'm here. We can do this, and we can do it a lot more cost-effective than the existing players.
I remember going to some of this industry space shows back 10 years, 12 years, and SpaceX was starting to show their face. They would have booths in a corner somewhere. They're very small. I remember asking around some of the other bigger companies what they thought of SpaceX, and they thought that SpaceX, with their proposed launch prices, very low launch prices, were really mostly talk more than anything else, and that they could never really produce a rocket that would be competitive with such low prices. I wasn't so quick to believe that, because I thought, there was something unique about Mr. Musk. He did talk big. He was a little brash, but what our industry needed was somebody like, say, a Steve Jobs, somebody that could really push the envelope.
2004 was certainly a key moment for them.
SpaceX protested NASA awarding a $230 million contract to now defunct Kistler Aerospace. SpaceX argued that NASA did not allow other companies to bid for the contract, and the government sided with SpaceX.
스페이스X는 나사의 관료지휘와 싸워서 이겼습니다. 나사는 키슬러라는 업체에게 2억 3천만 불에 해당되는 독점 계약을 주었습니다. 스페이스X는 이에 이의를 제기했고 정부는 스페이스X 손을 들어줬습니다. 이것이 결정적 계기가 되어서 스페이스X는 크게 성장하게 되었습니다.
It's a difficult road to orbit. Musk has said that the company was running out of cash in 2008. SpaceX had attempted to launch Falcon 1 to orbit 3 times, but had failed 3 times.
Musk kept pushing. Even after the third failure, I thought maybe he would wait for a year to investigate really carefully what happened and just to be more cautious. But to my surprise, within a few months, he was trying again.
Beyond putting his own money into SpaceX, Musk had to also convince some fellow entrepreneurs to invest in the company.
The funds that came in at that time, they're no dummies, right? So they had done their diligence, they understand what was happening. They saw 3 failures and they saw an entrepreneur who had learned a lot from that, right? And they had a lot of confidence in his ability to get to orbit. The idea there is that you put your money in before you get to orbit, lower price, and benefit from what happened next, and they certainly did.
Then, on a remote island in the Pacific Ocean, Falcon 1 did it. In September 2008, SpaceX became the first to privately develop and successfully launch a liquid-fueled rocket to orbit.
I just read every book I possibly could on rocket engineering and decided to try giving it a go. I'd actually only had enough money for 3 flights, so I had no more money left, and we managed the team sort of rallied, and we managed to put together enough spare parts to do a 4th launch, and that 4th launch was successful.
So what would have happened if it wasn't successful?
SpaceX would have died.
In 2008, they made it to orbit. In 2009, they made it to orbit with their Falcon 1, carrying commercial payloads and paying customers.
That's when investors really started to pay attention to SpaceX, and their valuation took off.
Then, SpaceX got its first big NASA win, a $1.6 billion contract to launch cargo to the International Space Station. SpaceX was building its first Dragon capsule for the cargo missions, as well as developing a rocket with 9 engines instead of just 1. Called Falcon 9, the rocket would be capable of sending satellites the size of school buses to orbit.
What we're looking at over there, that's a quarter section of the Falcon 9 17-foot diameter fairing. It's 17-foot diameter and obviously and 50 feet long. It's capable of taking the largest satellites in the world.
And this is when SpaceX evolved from an engineering dream into a business.
3, 2, 1.
Stage 1.
Liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
First stage engine shut down.
Second stage has separated.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Over the course of dozens of launches, SpaceX continued to evolve the Falcon 9 rocket.
SpaceX has become a major provider of launch services to the U.S. military, a segment of the market which was traditionally closed to all but 2 companies, Boeing and Lockheed, as part of the joint venture called ULA. The company was able to break that monopoly. That's not a small achievement. That's huge.
SpaceX has led a boom in private companies that now challenge legacy contractors like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, and Northrop Grumman in the rocket business. But other young companies, like Jeff Bezos' company Blue Origin, are beginning to aim for SpaceX market share. For example, Blue Origin landed a rocket booster first.
Welcome back, New Shepard.
But SpaceX took it to the next level.
스페이스X는 혁신에 만족하지 않고 다음 단계의 혁신에 나섰습니다. 이번에는 우주 트랜스포테이션에 큰 비용을 차지하는 로켓을 재사용하는 문제였습니다. 전문가들조차 불가능하다고 했지만 냉철한 판단과 끈질긴 노력으로 재사용 로켓을 개발하는 데 성공했습니다. 이러한 기술 개발의 덕분으로 우주여행 비용을 획기적으로 낮출 수 있었고 기하급수적 기업으로 더욱 성장하게 되었습니다.
While Falcon 9 has had multiple improvements, one stood out dramatically: Musk's vision of reusing rockets.
SpaceX's launching and landing of rockets is not something that they invented, but something that they've perfected and something that they were able to bring to market.
SpaceX began working on vertically landing a rocket with a program called Grasshopper. The prototype had several explosive failures. Or, as SpaceX called them, a rapid, unscheduled disassembly.
I admire them for not being afraid to fail. Engineers learn more from their failures than they do from incremental improvements.
In December 2015, SpaceX did it. SpaceX landed the booster stage of its Falcon 9 rocket on the company's landing pad in Florida.
Reusable rockets is a huge move forward. Makes rockets a lot cheaper. That's really revolutionized the satellite industry.
And they landed more funding too.
Google come in with $1 billion, and then now everyone wants in, right? We're seeing retail investors come in, mutual funds, that type of thing. So you can see really the evolution of the type of investors and the milestones that SpaceX was able to hit that convinced them that this was a good investment.
Is SpaceX profitable? We are profitable.
Amid all of this, SpaceX also developed the Falcon Heavy rocket. Essentially 3 Falcon 9 rockets strapped together and beefed up. Musk first announced Falcon Heavy in 2011.
Well, we're super excited, obviously, at SpaceX to announce some of the details around the Falcon Heavy rocket, which is our large rocket development, really large rocket development.
After more than $500 million in development, SpaceX launched Falcon Heavy for the first time in a near flawless launch in February 2018. Musk put one of his own Tesla Roadsters on the top of the rocket, and millions watched SpaceX send a car into orbit around the sun. Experts in the field not only admire the flashiness and the results, but also the approach SpaceX takes to solving problems.
I remember seeing some of the very large composite fuel tanks that they had built and being a bit awestruck and wondering how in the heck did they do that? They're bold, they're user of new materials and methods. They approach everything with fresh ideas, and they go at it very, very quickly and with agility.
At the same time, SpaceX was deep into work on its next milestone NASA project.
스페이스X의 기하급수적인 성장 뒤에는 사업의 타이밍도 중요한 역할을 했습니다. 나사가 우주항공 장비를 직접 제조 생산하던 것에서 벗어나 외부에 위탁을 하기 시작한 것입니다. 이로 인해서 스페이스X는 인간을 우주에 보낼 수 있는 프로젝트를 수행할 기회를 가지게 되었습니다.
After the space shuttle program ended in 2011, NASA turned to the private sector to find a solution. Without the capabilities to launch human beings, the US has been paying Russia $80 million per astronaut to reach the space station.
There's this really fantastic public-private partnership between SpaceX and NASA. So NASA provided some funding to SpaceX early on to help them develop a lot of their technology, but now NASA is getting a return on that investment by hiring SpaceX.
SpaceX won a $2.6 billion contract for commercial crew.
The Dragon capsule is large and looks pretty comfortable, right? Astronauts have gone for long periods of time in much smaller spaceships. So they could also go to the moon, around the moon. They could go to the space station, and they could take individuals to the space station.
The Commercial Crew program, after a number of delays, is now set to see SpaceX launch its first astronauts in 2019. The capsule represents the company's first attempt at launching human beings. If SpaceX is going to fulfill Musk's dream of making humanity a multiplanetary species, the company must be able to reliably and safely launch astronauts. They completed their first successful launch, with dummies sitting in for a crew, in early 2019.
Here in Southern California, sometimes we occasionally see the SpaceX rockets in the night sky. It's really exciting. I think it's having a really big impact.
SpaceX today has more than 6,000 employees. It represents a majority of all American launches. But as space travel becomes more mainstream, so do the questions facing the company.
There are a lot more women astronauts. There are a lot more astronauts of color. A lot more people of color are astronauts. NASA's been paying attention to this for a while, and it just, again, from the outside, it feels like SpaceX hasn't been prioritizing this, because if they had, we would just see different demographics at their company. SpaceX hasn't published their diversity numbers. There was an unofficial report from 2016 that estimated that 14% of SpaceX employees are women. That's a very low number. That's a low number even for science and engineering. That's lower than the fraction of undergraduates who are women who are getting degrees in math and engineering and physics and relevant fields.
SpaceX declined to comment on diversity, but in 2018, we spoke to President Gwynne Shotwell about women in the industry.
I speak to groups of women, both teeny women, tiny girls, through college and professionals whenever I have the opportunity to do so. I became an engineer and followed this career path because of a role model. So I think it's important to be as public as I can afford to be, and hopefully inspire women to kind of join me in this incredible field.
Of course, it's great that there's a woman essentially running SpaceX, but that doesn't mean by itself that the climate is inclusive for everybody. There's lots of data and studies that show that the more diverse your workforce, the better your outcomes.
And after Musk appeared to smoke pot during an interview, the U.S. Air Force reviewed his security clearance. What's next for Musk's space company? SpaceX is facing its most important test in Commercial Crew. And Musk is aiming to have SpaceX launch the same Falcon 9 rocket twice within 24 hours.
SpaceX는 나사와의 프로젝트를 통해서 인간을 우주에 보내는데 많은 노하우를 쌓았고 이제는 일반 민간인을 우주에 보내는 프로젝트를 추진할 수 있게 되었습니다.
As the company aims to make spaceflight more akin to air travel.
I'd like to introduce the first paying customer of BFR, Yusaku Miyazawa. Please come forward.
Thank you, Elon. Thank you, everyone.
In August 2018, SpaceX signed Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa as the first passenger for Starship, with a planned tourism flight around the moon. That flight is planned for 2023. Several years down the road will be the launches of Starship, the enormous rocket SpaceX is building to send as many as 100 humans to the moon, Mars, and more.
In general, Mars is far better suited to ultimately scale up to be a self-sustaining civilization.
It's one thing to send humans to Mars. It's another thing to colonize Mars. And there's a perspective by which maybe before we go to colonize other planets, we should figure out how to live on this planet without destroying it, which we haven't figured out yet.
He's easy to criticize, certainly, and I think, you could say he overpromises and underdelivers, but there's no question that he inspires. And I think that might be part of what works for his companies is that, he makes very bold and aggressive projections, lays out a target, and then tries to meet it. He often falls short, but raise your hand if you don't occasionally fall short yourself.
Yeah, I would categorize them as the leader at this point. This is a company that in a very short time, I would say in about 10 years, has come the farthest I've ever seen any company in this industry come.
So when is Elon Musk going to space? I asked him.
When do you think that's going to happen? You mean like me personally? Oh, as far as me going, I'm not sure. He did suggest like maybe that I would join on this trip.
스페이스X의 미션 스테이트먼트입니다. 스페이스 기술을 혁명적으로 발전시키고 사람들로 하여금 다른 행성에서 살 수 있도록 하는 것입니다. 스페이스X는 자신들만의 고유한 MTP를 만드는 데 성공했습니다. 어린 시절에 좋아했던 사이언스 픽션이 실제 가능하다는 꿈을 심어줌으로써 직원들의 의욕을 고취시키고 새로운 인재를 영입하고 자신들의 커뮤니티를 위한 중력 중심을 만들 수 있었습니다. MTP는 기업의 이해관계자들, 특히 젊은 직원들에게 현실에 기초한 제대로 된 기업 이미지를 형성해 줍니다. 또한 핵심적 의사결정을 내려야 할 때 의지할 수 있는 원칙이 되어줍니다. 어펜딕스입니다. 지금까지 시청하신 것으로 이번 차수의 수업이 인정됩니다. 스페이스X와 관련한 동영상을 보도록 하겠습니다.
Most space organizations, government or commercial, have set their sights too low. They've really built relatively small rockets. And Falcon Heavy is the first time that there's something that's arguably even in the super heavy class, or somewhere between heavy and super heavy. 5 million pounds of thrust is really crazy amount of power. More than twice as much payload as any other rocket in the world. It can launch things direct to Pluto, no stop needed.
Hotels in the area are completely sold out.
Yeah.
Parking lots are packed.
It's like the first time something exciting has happened in rocket launch in a very long time.
Falcon Heavy is configured for flight.
T-minus 15, stand by for terminal count.
SpaceX Falcon Heavy, go for launch.
10, 9,
All systems go. 3. Side booster ignition.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Side boosters.